So in the last video, which will be linked down below, we went over a bunch of amazing features that come on the RME UCX2. And one of those features was DURec. Now, if you're not familiar with DURec, what it is RME's ability to have their interfaces act as standalone multi-track recorders. So you can record all the inputs and all the outputs onto a USB stick that's connected into the back. Now, this was also the feature that got the most questions from you out there. A lot of people would say, it's a really cool concept, but I'm not quite sure exactly how I'd use it in my workflow or on a day-to-day basis. So in this video, we're gonna talk about just that. I use DURec every single day in my sessions, recording the entire time. And there's two reasons why I do that. One is I have these two floater microphones that we set up in the last video that are just always in the room. They're always recording the room tone. Someone might pick up and sing something into it, but a lot of the times they're just capturing the ambiance in the room. And when you're doing a session with a singer or a songwriter or multiple people, there's a lot of ideas going on, and someone might say a lyric or they might hum a melody and then be overstimulated and forget what they just did and then have to try and search and get back to it. Well, with DURec and those two microphones, I'm recording the entire time. So with a couple of button presses on the ARC USB controller, I can pull up the file and play them back exactly what they just did and help jog their memory. And I've actually recovered quite a few melodies and lyric ideas inside of sessions because of this feature. Now, the second thing that happens quite a bit too is inside of your sessions, there's a lot of banter, conversation, people talking, going back and forth. And those are really magical moments. So since I'm always recording through DURec, I actually can take that file, extract the stems, and then I use those little outtake moments for intros on a song or for outros on a song, or sometimes even as an interlude in between songs if they're doing an album. And it gets a lot of great moments, and the artists really appreciate it too, because now they have something unique in their song or on their album that we wouldn't have got if we hadn't been recording through DURec the entire time. So in this video, we're gonna go over everything you need to know on how to set up DURec. We're gonna go over formatting the hard drive, setting up the snapshots to have DURec properly recording, setting up a playback snapshot, then how to custom map the ARC USB controller so with just a couple of button presses, you can access those files and play them back. And then at the end of the video, we're gonna go over the RME Wave batch processing software, show you how you can extract the stems from the recordings so you can then take those stems, drop them into your sessions, and have a bunch of those great candid moments for intros, outros, and interludes. So let's get into everything you need to know about DURec so you can get your studio set up so you never miss a moment. The first thing we're gonna have to do is get our USB properly formatted to work with DURec. So here inside of Disk Utilities, we can see our external drives that are connected right here, and by default, it is Mac OS formatted. So if we come over to the top right under Erase, we're gonna get a drop-down menu with a whole bunch of formats on here. And you might be looking at this, and if you're new to formatting, you might say, well, I don't see FAT32. It's actually also called MS-DOS FAT. So we're gonna select that. Now there's one thing we need to address before we actually hit Erase and reformat this. This needs to be formatted in a master boot format, and we don't have any secondary menu here to drop down to make sure that it's selected as a master boot. So let's cancel that and let's go up to the top here, and under View, we're gonna go to Show All Devices instead of Show Only Volumes. So after we enable Show All Devices, we can actually see the root directory file right here saying Samsung flash drive that's connected. So now when we go over here and hit Erase, we actually have three lines to choose from. We have name, format, and scheme. So I'm just gonna call this 256 because it's a 256 hard drive. Come over here, MS-DOS FAT, and we have to make sure that this is formatted as a master boot record. If it's formatted in the other two, you will see a system error on the UCX or any other RME device, so just make sure, double check that it's master boot record. Hit Erase, and now this drive has been properly formatted. Remember, it must be selected as MS-DOS and also using the submenu to select master boot record. Now when you first plug in the freshly formatted drive, the RME interface will have to initialize the device. So on the screen, you will see it saying initialized, but if you're curious how much longer you're going to have to wait for it to actually initialize the device, down here in the lower right corner of Total Mix, we can see that we have sort of a count up of how much data it's already initialized. So on a 2 terabyte drive, it might take a little bit of time. If you are planning on using this in a studio, just make sure your computer's turned on a little bit before the session. And if you're using this out in the field to do a live performance, I would say use something like maybe a slightly smaller device, which will initialize a lot quicker. Now here we are inside of Total Mix. We have our USB stick formatted, connected, and initialized, and we're ready to set up DURec recording. One quick little housekeeping thing is that in the last video, when we set up the mix for our main, a lot of people asked, well, when I switch over to the phones here, I see a bunch of the values are different. Instead of having to go through and reset all of these to match the main, is there an easy way to do it? There is. You just right-click on the main and hit Copy Mirror Output. Go over to the phones and then right-click and put Mirror of Output. And then we see that those values have just changed to match the main. Now, if you want to save this, let's say you are mixing late at night without the monitors on, but you still want to hear that same mix through your headphones, anytime we make any changes, we see the button is flashing over here. So we're just going to have to save this current configuration. So we hit Store at the bottom and then click on mix number 1 in order to save that into our memory. That being said, let's set up the DURec recording. So right down here at the bottom right, we have our DURec section. And the first thing we're going to want to do is switch on Record View. Now what we're going to see is that there's a bunch of play and record buttons that just populated on top of all of our input channels and all of our output channels, meaning that we're able to record anything that's coming in and anything that's going out. So in this scenario, we have our setup as we did in the previous video, where we have the 2 float microphones coming in through 1 and 2, and we have the guitar and the bass that are always connected. We're doing a lot of singer-songwriter sessions in here, and we never want to miss a moment. Now, we have our monitors actually turned up, so we don't want to create any sort of feedback loop. So we are going to leave these levels all low right here. Now let's first set our gain accordingly. So under float microphone number 1, I'm just going to hit the wrench and open this up. And I could adjust the gain right here, but I'm not sure exactly where I need to set the gain because these mics are essentially capturing room tone, conversations. Someone might pick it up and sing in it. And I just want to make sure that it's never going to clip. So I'm going to come down here and switch on auto set. Now what auto set is going to do is anytime the microphone clips, it's just going to pull the gain back a little bit. It's a one-way communication, so anytime there's clipping, it just adjusts the gain, but it's not going to boost the gain if the signal is low. Just make a note of that. So if we turn this all the way up, we're going to see that the room mic, the floater mic, is actually starting to pick up my voiceover that I'm doing. And if we get too loud, I'm just going to tap on the microphone. We're going to see that with auto set turned on, it's going to adjust this gain so it doesn't clip again. So as you can see right there, it reduced it from 75 to 71. If I keep tapping on the microphone, this is just a preventative measure to make sure if it does clip once, it's not going to clip again. So on both of these floater mics, I'm actually going to leave auto set on, and I turn them up rather high just so I can pick up most of the room tone that's going on. But if someone picks it up and sings into the microphone, I'm not going to get clipping more than that one time. Again, we're leaving these levels low down here because we don't want this signal actually feeding out to our mains. I am going to have the DAW turned on. I am going to have the main monitors up. There might be some drums playing back or a beat playing back, and while we're getting ideas. So I don't want to actually have the microphones feeding back into the main outputs. Now I'm also going to come over here. I have auto set already turned on to the guitar. I'm going to turn this up pretty loud and then just give the guitar a strum. And really quickly, we can see that it adjusted the gain right here to make sure that I'm not clipping. Now on the bass, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to turn auto set on and turn this up. And when we start using the bass, if it does clip, it's going to automatically compensate. Now I may come back into Total Mix and turn up the guitar and bass if someone wants to hear that coming out of the speakers so they can jam along to whatever sort of beat we have going on, but I'm always going to leave this down while I'm recording in order not to get a feedback loop out of the main speakers. So now that we have all of our sources, levels set, and all of the tracks armed to record, I'm just going to be safe, come over here and store this as snapshot number 1. So now we're going to have to set up a playback scenario. So the first thing we're going to have to do is tell Total Mix on what channels to play back the recorded files. So under the play button, when we click on that, we are seeing the different outputs that we can have the recorded files play on. So since we recorded Float Mic 1 on channel 1, I want it to play back through channel 1, and I want channel 2 to play back through channel 2, channel 3 to play back through channel 3, and channel 4 to play back through channel 4. So now that we've told Total Mix where to play all the recorded files, we're gonna save a snapshot for the playback scenario. I like to use snapshot number 5 over here as my playback snapshot. Now, if we were to play back right now in this current state, we actually wouldn't hear anything because all of these levels are zeroed out. And if we brought up this level right here while the main fader is up, we're gonna actually start hearing that feedback loop because this microphone is still live. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just take these 2 microphone gains and bring them all the way down. So when we increase these 2 faders to play back through the main that's selected here, we're not actually going to hear that feedback loop. So let's make sure both of these gains are brought down to 0. Also, we're going to bring up the levels of the guitar and the bass, because when we play back, we want to hear any sort of guitar or bass that was recorded right here. And now I have these levels set for playback, but we're not getting a microphone feedback loop coming through the 2 floater mics. We still have the gain up on the guitar and bass channel, just in case someone maybe wanted to jam along with the playback, but you could also bring these all the way down to 0 if you just wanted to cut the guitar and bass out when we're playing back the DURec file down here. So now that we made all these changes, we can see that we're getting a flashing over here, meaning that the state has been altered. So we're gonna store this, and we're actually gonna store this as mix number 5. Now, really quick, let's review what we just set up. So when we're here in mix number 1, we have our gains set for all the incoming channels, but the levels down primarily so we're not getting the feedback loop through microphone 1 and 2. And then when it's time to playback, since we want to play back the DURec recording through our main speakers, and we flip over to snapshot number 5, the gains all zero out and the levels all come up so we can hear that recorded multi-track played back in real time through our main studio speakers. So now let's go over to the ARC USB controller and customize it so we can quickly and efficiently switch between recording into DURec and then playing back the DURec files through our main monitors. So if someone has an idea, it's recorded, and they want to hear that back, within a couple of button presses, we can pull up that file and reference what just happened. So in order to customize the ARC USB controller like we did in the previous video, we come up to Options, come down to ARC Key Commands right here, switch over to the second tab so we see all of the buttons that are on the ARC USB controller. And by default, snapshots 1 through 8 are just on buttons 1 through 8. But we're actually going to use buttons 6, 7, and 8 in order to have instant access to DURec recording and DURec playback. So we're going to leave snapshot 5 alone, remember, because that is our DURec playback snapshot. But on 8, the first thing I'm going to do is come in here and set this to record start, which means that anytime I get in the studio before we begin a session, all I have to do is quickly hit snapshot number 8, and it's instantly going to start recording on DURec. Now, if someone just had an idea and they want to hear that idea back, we need to then be able to stop the recording. So if we come down here, we can see record, play, and stop. And then also we want to be able to play back the file. So we come down here and we just go to play start right there. Once we hit OK, we're going to see that number 7 lights up. That's a toggle switch that tells me right now that the recording is stopped. Okay, so now that we have everything set up and our buttons customized, first thing we're going to want to do when we start our session is we're just going to want to hit number 8, which is going to start our recording. Looking down at the lower right of Total Mix, we can see that the recording in DURec has been started. We're going along with our session. Let's say I'm tapping on the microphone here, and these are the best taps in the world. and all of a sudden someone wants to hear that playback. So what we're gonna do is hit number 7 in order to stop it, and we actually have to hit that twice. So we hit it twice, we can see that we've stopped the recording, and then we're gonna wanna flip over our total mix to Snapshot 5, which is our DURec playback mode. We switch over to that, we can see that the levels have gone up on playback 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the gain on the microphones has gone down to 0, so we eliminate any sort of feedback loop. So when we hit play, we're able to see the levels coming back through the main monitors, and we will hear whatever was just previously recorded. So let's say we're in our DAW and we need to scrub through that recording towards the end because the moment just happened. That's where we'd use our toggle windows button that we set up in the last video right here. Switch over to total mix really quick, use a little slider right here to scrub through the recording to maybe a minute back, hit play, hear what just happened so then the artist can reference that. Then we're going to flip back to snapshot number 1 to reset our levels, be ready to record in DURec again, and just hit record right here. Now we're right back to where we were, not missing a single moment. And after everything is set up and done, to take away the play and record button, we simply hit record view right here. Those will disappear, it goes back to normal, but those are stored in the state of the device, so whenever we turn the device back on again, all the recording and the playback routing will stay the same. So let's say we just wrapped up a session and there were moments during the session where there was conversations going on and there was some really cool little moments in those conversations that we wanted to take out of the recording and use maybe for an intro or an outro on a track, or maybe lace them through an interlude and build an interlude around what happened within that session. So this is where DURec comes in very handy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the USB out of the back of the interface, plug it into the computer, and open it up. So here you can see we have several files. Now this is from a 5.5-hour session, and you'll see that we have 5 2 gig files and then another 1 gig file here. So I'm estimating with the 4 tracks that I'm recording in, we're getting about a 2 gig file size per hour. Now when you're recording in DURec, it does make what's called a multi-channel WAV file, which means that it's all the channels compressed in one WAV file, and we have to use a program to extract all the individual waves that are inside of this one file. That's where RME Wave Processor comes in. So here we are inside of the program, and to add our first file, we're just going to come down here and hit the plus button. Now we want to actually select the very first file because the program will recognize that all these files are attached, and as it extracts each individual track out of this compressed file, it's actually going to connect all of these together as well. So let's just select 00 right here. You can see that it's recognized the whole string of files, and it's going to say, I want to extract all the way up to the very end. Or if we just want to extract, let's say, the very first one, we could just do that. It's only going to extract the first one. If we want the first 3 hours of the session, we just select this. So you can see we have the choice to select exactly what hour we want to extract into stems, or if we want to do the whole thing. For this demonstration and for time's sake, I'm just going to say it happened in the first hour. And how do we want to extract? Do we want to extract into stereo files, 2 channels per file? Do we want single channel per file, or do we want all of it in one? Well, this we have mono channels going in, so I'm just going to extract 1 channel files, and I'm going to keep it as a wave. I'm going to select the output source to the same area that we actually have the raw files. So I'm just going to create a new folder, call it stems, and I'm just going to call this vocal outtake. Hit choose and then start at the bottom. Right here you'll see that we do have a real-time estimate of how much work has been done, but for this video we're going to speed up the process a little bit. Then we'll get confirmation that it's done, and if we go back to our browser and go into the stems, we can see that we actually have labels on each one of these files, so it's easy for us to say grab the float mic number 1, drop it into our session, grab that little vocal outtake, use it as an intro, outro, or maybe even a cool interlude. So hopefully that's everything you need to know about DURec so you can get it all set up and running in your studio. I hope this video helped you see how you can elevate your workflow and never miss a moment, and then use those moments for creative things inside of your projects and inside of your sessions. Now, if you plan on getting any gear, this is where I have to do the shameless plug. I do have an affiliate link down below for Zounds. A little tiny bit of your purchase goes back to help support the channel so I can keep making these videos and getting them out to you. And if you have any other questions about the features on the RME interfaces or anything related to audio productions, just leave it in a comment down below and I'll try and get to a video to answer your questions. My name's Stu. This is Create, Educate, and Inspire. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I hope you can implement the DURec feature into your workflow and capture some really cool, unique moments to help you make something cool. Peace.